Treyarch, Activision, nobody cared about anything we did as long as it would come out day and date with the movie. Swinging around, but in a goblin skin, and he's like, I'm gonna add the bombs, right? And so he like added the bombs, and then he's like, I'm gonna have the glider. It's like, okay, cool, you know. And he just kept on doing it. If Xbox wasn't ready, we weren't gonna do Xbox, you know. And GameCube came along a little bit later, and we're like, we'll see what we can do, right? Getting it through the Sony side was harder, and the only concession we had to make is we had to drop playable Ross Goblin. We really wanted to make it a great game. It just was so tight, and we stumbled a little.
Welcome back. Before we get started, comment where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Today we had a really interesting conversation with Greg Taylor, who was the engineer and platform programmer on Spider-Man 1. Greg's had a hell of a run in the games industry, working on games including Ghost of Tsushima, Infamous 2, Infamous Festival of Blood, Infamous Second Son, Infamous First Light, Spider-Man 3, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2. And on this game, Spider-Man 1, he worked as an engineer and platform programmer where he made the Goblin and Vulture AI for the aerial boss battles, the Shocker boss battle AI, Spider-Man's player-controlled camera, and he also made the sound streamer on this game that he then, in Spider-Man 2, developed into the data streamer that allowed the massive open world to work. So this sound streamer was being worked on before GTA 3. This episode was massive. We talked for over 3.5 hours, spilling into all sorts, such as Spider-Man 2, Ultimate Spider-Man, and into like super technically programmy stuff. It was all ridiculously interesting and I didn't want to scrap it, so this episode's divided into 2 parts. The first bit is the main chat about the making of Spider-Man, and then the second part, after the ending, is where the conversation goes more off topic into all the other stuff. So, hope you enjoy. So I'm here today with Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor was the platform programmer on Spider-Man, the movie game. Thank you very much for being here, Greg.
Good to be with you. It's Spider-Man, the movie, the game. It has 2 colons in it. We always thought that was funny, but that's what they wanted us to call it. So there you go.
We're very insistent if we need the 2. 2 colons.
Yeah, and it had to have 2 subscripts because the movie was Spider-Man : the movie, and they're like, well, what do we do with that? It's like the movie, the game. So yeah,
Tum. Very dramatic too. So Spider-Man 2: Enter Electro was released October 2001, and the movie game was released April 2002, which is 6 months later. So from your memory, how long was the development time for this game? And I say that specifically because Chris and Jamie had 2 different recollections of how long the development time was.
I could believe it. It's been a long time, dude. So because I started in September of 2000 at Treyarch, I did about 2 to 3 months on Max Steel. So I think we probably started late fall of 2000. So like November-ish.
So is that like 18-ish months?
Yeah, it was 18 months. Yeah, it was 18 months.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 was closer to 2 years, but Spider-Man 1 had a tighter schedule, and the schedule was the great limiter. Like Sony, Treyarch, Activision, nobody cared about anything we did as long as it would come out day and date with the movie. And so any ambitions that we had to be kind of measured against that. Is it going to threaten our release date? And we were a very creative team. We wanted to do more. We had a great chance to work in the Spider-Man system, like the whole concept, the universe. And we had very little time to do it. You know, we kind of start from zero. We'd never done a Spider-Man game before. We had to figure it out. Kind of bringing in some of Neversoft's stuff, but ultimately we had to make our own lane as well. And we had 18 months to get it done. And that was tight. That was real tight. You know.
Because Chris, so like from Chris's recollection of it, he recalled it being a 6-month cycle, and Neversoft, like team members were coming in to help with their code, put on the code base or something like that. And then Jamie, whenever I said that to Jamie, he was like, no, it was 18 months. And I was like, so
It was
he
18
was like, I
months.
was like, was there
It was
a
18
port
months.
or something that was confused the timeline or something?
No, we did have some Neversoft people. I think they mentioned it. I think we had 1 or 2 guys from Neversoft come over and help us adapt their code to our engine. Right. Because we needed to get some stuff from their version of Spider-Man into our code.
Yeah.
And we didn't have programmers to spare. Now, you said that they launched 6 months apart. That's because Neversoft was doing their own game, right? Like they did their own Spider-Man game, and we were doing the movie game alongside it. So it was definitely not a 6-month development cycle. We're talking a full 18 months. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I think Neversoft did the first one, and then they were like focused on Tony Hawk, and then I think it was like Vicarious Visions or someone that got the
Did
sequel.
Vivi do the second one?
I think I'm 99% sure they did.
I could believe it. Activision does a lot of kind of moving those things around between their studios. We weren't owned by Activision at Spider-Man 1, but we were basically doing all the work for them. I mean, the Mattel contract paid for a lot, and that was very, very helpful. But once we got in with Activision, we just kind of did whatever Activision wanted us to do. And then they bought us, I think, during Spider-Man 2 is when they acquired Treyarch.
So Chris said that the game was originally set to be Spider-Man 3, the sequel to Enter Electro. Do you recall if this game was originally set to be on PS1, or was it always intended to be on like the PS2 generation?
PS2 and maybe something else, but like PS2 was the one. It was the first of the new generation of consoles coming out. Dreamcast was old business. PlayStation 1 was done. Like this was the time, right? SSX was coming out as kind of one of the launching games. There's some Japanese titles, but it was right at that cusp where the PS2 was happening. There was no question we were doing PS2. Whether or not Xbox would make it was a question. We had to kind of fight to see if we could get Xbox kits and if they would be ready in time for us to make it, because we had to make it day and date with movie. Yeah. So if Xbox wasn't ready, we weren't going to do Xbox, and GameCube came along a little bit later and we're like, we'll see what we can do. Right. And we got it done. But yeah, it was always going to be a PS2 game. Everything else was up in the air, but it was going to be at least a PS2 game. At the start, we didn't have PlayStation 2 development kits, and ultimately we got 2 kits. Japan was really slow getting us the kits. It was really rushed for them getting the hardware out. And so the first 2 kits we got, I got one and Wade got the other because we were working on the port. And all the manuals were in Japanese. So that was fun.
Brilliant.
Right? They hadn't yet translated any of the manuals to English. So we had to kind of just wing it and do a lot of like looking up of what stuff meant, and it was pretty wild. Whether or not it was going to be Spider-Man 3, I don't remember any of that. I only remember it as being the movie game. So
yeah, no, it was just interesting because Enter Electro was 2001. I think late 2001, and the PS2 came out over like a year and a half prior to that. So it's just interesting, just with the timeline.
Well, I mean, sometimes those things are already in flight. Like there's no hardware to put it on the PS2 yet. So you're making a game. What are you going to do? You're going to release it on the older hardware, even if it comes out after the new hardware is out. There's always that kind of generational overlap. Like Sony was really, really burning to get that thing out. It felt like it was taped together when we got the dev kits. It was just like,
really?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they were there, they were real, but like it was really slapdash. Like in order to update the system software, you had to like log into the PS2 and do this complicated like Linux based update system. It was really janky. It was not polished at all when we got those kits. So, they were really burning to get that thing done. And the kits that got out into people's hands early on were really rough affairs for the first 6 months or so while Sony finished up. I don't think we got English manuals until maybe 6 or 8 months in, like finally got the English manuals. So
that is mad. There wouldn't have been really any way to translate from the Japanese language back then. Like you couldn't go on the internet and.
I don't remember how we did it. Yeah. I mean, the internet existed. I think there may have been some translation services that we used, but I think we mostly just asked Sony saying, "What is this?"
Tell us, please.
On a page where we couldn't figure out what they were talking about, we'd be like, "What is this?" What does this say? And we had, I do remember going back and forth in emails where we would like paste in some Japanese text and then having a Sony support person send us back the English so we knew what they were talking about. This was years before I learned Japanese. And now my wife's Japanese. Like I know Japanese. I'm fine now. But back then I didn't know any of that stuff. So it was a little dicey.
Just staring at it. What do these lines and pictures mean?
Yeah, Japanese is it's not, you can't even sound it out like some European languages, right? Like it's written in Chinese.
It's like the sentences are built other ways and stuff.
Well,
the way they construct words or something.
It's like Yoda, like Star Wars. Star Wars, like Yoda, speaking pattern was built off of Japanese grammar. But I mean, it's mostly just that they're using Chinese characters. And so you can't even like try and sound it out. Like if you saw something written in German or Spanish, you could try and sound it out and the languages are close enough. You could try and figure out what they mean. But when it's a Chinese character, there's nothing you could do. You're like, oh, well, don't know what that is. Maybe it's a goat, you're looking at it like a hieroglyph.
So in this game, the city streets are inaccessible. Was it ever considered to be an open world game, or was it always intended to be a level-based game?
Well, very, very early on, I distinctly remember going to Jamie's office and pitching to him the idea of an open world style Spider-Man game. We didn't really call it that, but it was because there wasn't that language in the game industry yet. But I said, what I want to do with the Spider-Man game is I want to be able to like go around New York City and solve Spider-Man kind of crimes and do little like, petty superhero stuff, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff in between the big tentpole moments of our movie story. Right. And so we, and Jamie just said, dude, we don't have time. Like we have 18 months. We got to get this day and date with the movie. We have to choose our battles. And that's a cool idea and it'll be super rad, but we can't do it, maybe on the next one. And hint, Spider-Man 2, we did, we came back to that idea and said like, let's do it this time, but when you have a fixed deadline and it's tight, you have to choose your battles. And we looked at the options and we said, we're going to have to stay with level-based. And Max Steel was a level-based game. And so we just stuck with that because it was just very, very predictable. So anytime you were down on the ground, not on the tops of buildings, was a level that was built for that, like the sewers and a couple other places, right? And then we had aerial levels that were kind of like up in the skies on rooftops to try and get some of that Spider-Man feeling. We didn't let you go down to the street because we didn't have time or memory in the hardware to build the streets. They didn't exist, right? So those levels were very specifically aerial based because we wanted to give you that feeling, but we didn't have the time budget or the memory budget or anything to get down that level. Now, when Spider-Man 2 came around, we had a little bit better idea of what the hardware could do. And we had a little bit more time. It was about a 2-year development cycle on Spider-Man 2. And I said, I want to make, somebody came to me. I may have been the producer at the very beginning of Spider-Man 2. And I know you're talking about Spider-Man 1, but very beginning of Spider-Man 2, he said, okay, you've done a lot of the data streaming for the sound system. Can we make a data streaming non-level based free roam Spider-Man 2? Can we do it? And I said, yes, we can do it. And they say, are you sure? And I said, yes, give me 6 months to do the prototype of it and prove that it can be done. And if it doesn't work, we cut bait and we go with the level-based approach. And I got it done in about 5 months or so. And, it took a lot of work after that to make it shippable. But because of my experience with that data streaming on the sound system, I was able to leverage that same code and that same expertise and put it to work, having the game load in stuff as you're playing, which that freed up the memory that we didn't have on Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man, like the PlayStation had 32 megabytes of RAM or something like that. And the GameCube had 24, right? So it was tight. It was tight, and that was 2 different types of RAM in the GameCube. I think 16 megs was slow RAM and 8 megs was fast or something like that. So it was really, really tight on those platforms. And we couldn't load a whole city. We just couldn't do it. And so you had to data stream it as you're moving around. So wherever you're going in Spider-Man 2, there's just a little bubble of world around that's loaded and everything else is gone. It doesn't exist until you come closer to it. And that's how we made it work. But it was way out of scope for what we could do in Spider-Man 1. We literally did not have the time to risk it. We couldn't take that gamble. And Spider-Man 2, we only took that gamble because I said, I think I can do it. Give me a chance to prove it. And the way I built that prototype is I built it in layers so that if I came across something that made it impossible to do, we would be able to leverage and keep everything that I had done so far and just make the level-based game that much better. But, it kept building, and eventually we got there and the whole thing worked. So we just couldn't take that risk in the Spider-Man 1 era. It was too new hardware. It was too short of a schedule. It was too bold to risk the day and date release with the movie. And so it was a level-based game. Like we decided that very early on based on our constraints. You
Whenever
have to make those hard calls.
Yeah. Whenever you pitched the idea to Jamie, did you have like it in your head? It's like, I think I might be able to do it this way because of... No, it was just
No, this was really early on. This is before I'd done any of the data streaming stuff.
Okay.
I was just a cool boy out of college. And when you mention a Spider-Man game, I said, this would be way cooler if you could go do Spider-Man stuff. Like do all the things and choose which thing you want to go do at a given time and explore a big city. I just thought it would be cool. Yeah. I didn't know how to do it. Later on in Spider-Man 2, I knew exactly what we were dealing with. I believe GTA 3 had come out, proven that it was doable on the hardware. And I knew all about how the data streaming worked. I'd been living that world for like 8 months of the Spider-Man 1 development. And I knew how to move stuff in and out of RAM. And I said, we'll be able to do it. We just need to solve a couple of key problems.
Yeah. So, what was the reasoning behind making the Green Goblin playable? Because it was amazingly badass. Obviously took a mountain of work. But just what was the reason for making it playable? Because like games just straight up, they don't do that. And I'm not even sure that many games have even done it since making the main villain.
I'm surprised we got away with it. This kind of goes back to what I was saying about this team being very driven to make things as cool as we possibly could within the constraints that we had. And when we had an idea that sounded cool, we just like, how can we get that in? And I think we just kind of got that in and they didn't notice how much work it was going to be and how crazy it was. And I think they probably made the wrong decision at letting us do it. But it was cool, wasn't it? So I think that one came from Jason Bear. So if you get a chance to talk to Jason, you should do it. He is a mischievous problem solver, and he will create problems for you by how cool he wants things to be. I would always want to get Jason on my team whenever I'm working because he's a monster. But
Was it like
he just got it working because he thought it would be cool. He's like, "Hey guys, check this out," um, and we're like, "That's sweet." I think it started when he was playing around with just alternate Spider-Man skins. So like he would take the security guard skin or whatever and put it onto Spider-Man. And so Spider-Man's swinging around looking like a security guard. The wildest I think that ever got was we got the giraffe model from the zoo in Spider-Man 1 and we like put it onto Spider-Man and it's got this giant long giraffe head, but it's using the same bone structure as Spider-Man. So all the bones are there, right? But it's just got this ridiculously long head. And when he's swinging around, the head's just like wobbling back and forth. And he's got these really long giraffe legs and they're just kind of flopping around, shooting web lines and stuff everywhere. And it was super fun, right? We're like, that's really goofy. And we sent out some crazy screenshots to the team of the giraffe swinging around. And then at one point he's like, I'm going to do a Green Goblin. And I was sharing the office with Jason Vera at the time, and we were just kind of hatching all sorts of creative, rebellious ideas. And so he just did it and it was rad, right? And it was just Spider-Man swinging around, but in a goblin skin. And he's like, I'm going to add the bombs, right? And so he like added the
it
bombs.
begins?
And then he's like, I'm going to have the glider. It's like, okay, cool, And he just kept on doing it. And it got to the point where it's like, this is kind of cool, like it was just like burning off steam because we were working 16-hour days. It was just brutal.
Wow.
Spider-Man 1 into Spider-Man 2, generally we work 6 days a week, easily 12 plus hours a day for those 2 years.
Jesus.
So there was times that we were 14 hours a day. There was times that we were 16. There was a reason I burned out and moved to Japan in Spider-Man 3. When I went to the Ultimate Spider-Man team, I set a ultimatum for Ultimate Spider-Man. I said, I will go to your team. I will work on your game, but I am leaving at 7 p.m. Hell or high water, I'm walking out the door. And if you don't like it, I just won't come back. And that was the deal that I got to be on that team. It's like, I'm going to leave at 7. And if you don't like it, I'm going to go find another job because I just can't do it anymore. And that was my time on Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man. But in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 1 was the reason I got to that point where I was just so tired of working all the time.
Was that the full team that was on 16-ish hour days?
At least 12. At least 12.
At least 12.
It was
mad.
Brutal. It was brutal.
And is it because the game industry was brutal? I suppose it still is now, but
it's better now.
Was that just like straight up unpaid overtime, or was it like
unpaid? Royalties was the thing that they dangled as the carrot. They're like, oh, you're gonna get royalties from the game.
Bonuses if you hit targets or anything?
No, just if the game sold well, you could get some of the royalties.
Was it worth it?
No. It wasn't worth it for the money. Spider-Man 2 was kind of worth it for the game, right?
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is one of those games that people in my career, they go, oh yeah, that was a game, And there's parts of it that were really kind of shabby and underdeveloped because we just didn't have time, but it pushed so much of that superhero fantasy right out into your face and said, be a superhero, go for it. You could dive off the Empire State Building and like it was fake traffic as you're falling down. And then as you got close to the street, we subbed in the real traffic and the real people. And it was all seamless, and it was the eye-opening superhero game that just said, oh, wow, So was it worth it? I think Spider-Man 2 was worth it, like to make that impact in the industry. I don't mind losing those years of my life. Would I do it again? Probably not, But Spider-Man 1 was just a grueling thing, and we didn't get to do all the fun stuff that we wanted to. So I don't think it was quite as worth it. But anyway, you were talking about the Green Goblin thing. So Jason kept developing this little side thing of a playable Green Goblin just to kind of burn off steam. We're working crazy hours. You can't just do that and stay sane. You need to kind of burn off steam somehow, some way, right? And this was one of his ways, was just, I'm just tinkering on this little playable goblin. I got the grenades, I got the little machine guns on the thing, and and it got good. It got good enough that at one point we thought, why don't we make this like a little hidden mode? And we decided pretty early on that we weren't going to redo the cutscenes because we couldn't reanimate the cutscenes. We couldn't rewrite the story of the game to make it make sense. So it couldn't be like a thing that was a part of the main game. It had to be like a cheat or a prize for beating the game on a certain difficulty. And I think that's ultimately what we did. Is like, if you beat it on a difficulty, you can unlock the hardest goblin. And so because we didn't completely scrub the whole game and make it all make sense, it couldn't be kind of like a top tier back of the box feature. Right. But it was cool. And so we're like, okay, we'll accept that. We'll let the cutscenes and the story still be weird, but let's make the game part work. And so we went through every level and played every single level with the goblin skin and just said how it worked. And a lot of the AI didn't know what to do. They're like, you're flying around on a glider. I don't know how to deal with that. And so we had to kind of tweak the AI of the enemies so that they knew how to deal with it. Make sure Goblin had all of the techniques and stuff that he would need to go through every level. And some levels were kind of trivialized from the Green Goblin perspective. You could just kind of zoom through them and they just didn't exist, right? And some were really cool in the Green Goblin mode, right? And it just kind of worked up. And eventually it was like a little side project that was kind of a little secret thing. And then we showed it to the bosses and we're like, it's kind of done. It's kind of working. And, can we put it in the game? And they said yes, somehow. I think it was the wrong choice probably, but I'm glad they said yes. And we did it. It started getting put in near enough alpha for the game. Like we were done, content done for the most of the game. So it came in really hot at the end. And there was a really high likelihood of it getting cut because we couldn't get it bug free. And it was distracting from the main game. Like I said, we were already under a tight schedule as it was. It made no sense to take on this additional adventure. But it was cool,
Yeah.
So that's why we did it, and it was really fun. And we got a playable Ross Goblin skin as well, like the kind of spookier Halloween costume kind of goblin.
Killer. It looked amazing.
And we got that playable as well. And Sony really liked their Goblin because they were the movie company as well, right? And they thought their Goblin was the cooler one, and nobody agreed. Maybe somebody did, but we certainly didn't agree. And so they let us put in the Ross Goblin skin as like an enemy, but they wouldn't let us put it in as a playable. So that was a Sony choice, but we had it. It was there, and it was going to be like, I think it was going to be the prize for super hard, like beating the game on the hardest difficulty was getting the Ross Goblin skin playable. But we ended up like putting in this little bit of code that we hoped that the aftermarket modding people would find with like a Game Genie or something, where if they emptied out, if they zeroed out a particular piece of memory, it would enable the playable Ross Goblin. And we just hoped that somebody would find it. And so we tried to leave little clues of like the string, like the text that the thing was pointing to was like, playable Ross Goblins or whatever, and tried to leave these clues so that way if people were looking through the disk image and they were clever enough, they might be able to find it and enable it. But I don't think anybody has yet. Maybe that's a challenge for hackers of the future. Get that skin out, get it playable. It's probably past the statute of limitations now for Sony that I probably won't get dragged off to jail for leaving that little thing to be findable. I mean, you have to break rules to find it. There's no like key combination that you can put in on the pad to enable it. We didn't go that far because we didn't want to get caught and kind of get in trouble. But if you went in aftermarket, you could probably enable it in some way if you're clever enough. So maybe someday it'll come to light. That'd be cool.
No, definitely. Hopefully somebody out there can take a look and be like, oh, just remove this. Here we go.
And I never said any of that, of course. What are you talking about? Who, what?
It's all hearsay. Bathroom gossip. But yeah, no, Jamie said that Sam Raimi, whenever the playable Goblin was presented, Sam Raimi really did not like it.
I could believe that.
You weren't privy to any of that part of it.
Politics. There was a lot of politics.
Yeah.
You had, at that era, this is before the MCU, and before all of the licenses were kind of brought together. And so in that era of Marvel, every single comic book, essentially, was its own little fiefdom. And so when we were looking through the deck of villains that we could use, we couldn't use certain characters. So like, you know, we had the basic movie arc, but we wanted more game. We wanted more boss fights and stuff. So we wanted to add some things. And we had a deck from Marvel of the things that were allowed in the Spider-Man universe. It's like you get to something like Kingpin and it's like, nope, can't do that. That's Daredevil. I said, oh, okay. It's like, oh, no, those are X-Men. Those are X-Men bad guys. Oh, okay. And, oh, that's a Hulk bad guy. Oh, right. Okay. You know, and so it just got really frustrating to find some content that we could put in the game that was allowed under this little tiny Spider-Man boundary. And when we got to things like Venom, they're like, oh, no, we might use Venom in a sequel. So you can't use that. Nothing in the Venom side. Oh, okay, fine. And so that's why you got like third raters like Vulture and stuff. Sorry, Vulture fans. But like, you know, like it was hard to find. Like Rhino, I guess, was one of the bigger ones that we got, you know, that actually kind of a lot of people know about. But well, what else did we do? Like Shocker was not a big deal, you know. In the comics, I don't think, but he was allowed. And I did the AI for Shocker, the boss AI. And so I wanted it to be super fun and dynamic. And I think that was probably one of the more fun fights in that game is the Shocker fight. I did the Shocker fight in Spider-Man 2 as well, because I wanted to kind of explore character more, because there were a lot of fun to explore the Shocker character. So I think we did pretty good with what we were allowed to use, but we were pretty tightly handcuffed. And there was this Marvel versus Sony, like you're the kid in between two divorced parents trying to talk back and forth, like through you. So like, you know, like Sony wanted certain things, Sam Raimi wanted certain things, Tobey Maguire had certain requirements about how his model needed to look, and you know, whatever else. And you know, it just,
that's cool.
It just got really, you know, you're stuck in the middle between a bunch of things and a bunch of rules, and you just want to make something cool, and everything keeps getting in the way of you doing cool stuff. You know, so it's just a little frustrating.
That's mad. So was it? So Activision, or at least all the higher ups on the Treyarch business end, they were all cool with playable Goblin being in the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
I think so.
Surprising. I usually expect them to hit the deadlines.
I mean, they were not really. They didn't want it to risk the project, but it was a nice little bonus. Like we thought it might be a nice little thing that might help drive sales, and so that was the thing. The way that we pitched
for the pitch.
That was how we pitched it. Is like we couldn't put it on the box because it wasn't fully featured, but we were hoping that word of mouth would help drive sales, and so that's how we kind of like got it through the Activision side. Getting it through the Sony side was harder, and the only concession we had to make is we had to drop playable Ross Goblin, which was unfortunate because that was rad. rad. It was super cool.
It looks so cool.
Because that model is super rad, right? And so you're flying around doing all that stuff with that playable. It was really cool.
Yeah. So Chris said that you've got like Sony dumps of like stuff from the films, like artwork and stuff. What was it like whenever you came into work and it's just like, oh, we've got like parts of the Spider-Man suit or shots from the film, parts of...
That was mostly creative side. I was mostly doing programming and stuff. So we had our work cut out for us. The designers and the artists and stuff did all those things. We just hunkered down and did our thing. So I don't have much to say on that.
You've seen it, gave a thumbs up. I was like, I'm getting back to work here.
Chris was going to be the one who, was dealing with a lot of that stuff. I think he was the art director on that game. So that's his world. So yeah, I didn't do much with that. I had other stuff I needed to do.
Busy, more important stuff. Yeah. So did you do the AI for the Goblin, or what bosses did you do the AI for?
I did half of the AI for the Goblin. So I did the aerial AI for Goblin, and I did the vulture AI. So I did the 2 flying enemies basically. And Jason Bear, I think, did the ground AI for Green Goblin. So let me see. There was I think there was 2 main fights that you did with Goblin. One was aerial only, and one was like a combination aerial and ground.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I played this game.
Yeah, I think first one was aerial, and then.
So this is one of those things that can I diverge a little bit?
Go for it. Why not?
Okay. This is one of those things that I actually teach young gameplay programmers. Is I actually use my Green Goblin aerial AI as an example of how to think as a gameplay programmer when you're dealing with designers. So this is going to be a little bit of a long haul here, but it's cool. Maybe you'll get something out of this. So Green Goblin aerial, the designer comes to me and says, I want to do a chase with Green Goblin. And I'm like, okay, well, what's it going to be like? And he's like, oh, he's going to go and he's going to fly off and he's going to try and hide from you. And I said, okay, fine. Right. Well, ultimately, when I put that together, it was super, super unfun. There was nothing fun about it because the Goblin would be like, zoop, and hide. And you're what? Where did he go? Right. It was too hard to follow him, to understand as a player and really enjoy and feel cool. As a gameplay designer and programmer, your job is to make the player feel cool. You're not as an AI creator, you're not trying to create something smart. You're not trying to create something clever. You're trying to create something that makes the player feel cool. And everything you do is all smoke and mirrors if you can make the player feel cool. And you'll see this in a game like Batman Arkham Asylum. The villains are the bad guys, you're hiding in a warehouse or whatever, and they're talking about, I think he see him up there. I think that's where he went, and they're just talking about what they think Spider-Man or Batman in this case is doing. It's really cheap because they're just saying words, right? And it makes the player feel cool. The player's like, I am the stalking one. I'm the one doing all this cool stuff. And so I think the Arkham game did a really good job of just making the player feel cool super cheaply. There's no smart AI going on. It's just making the player feel it, So the Green Goblin flight AI, I went back to the designer. I said, this is no fun. This is no fun at all. You're chasing after this guy. It's too easy to lose him. You feel frustrated. You don't understand what's going on. The swinging kind of pacing is different from the flying pacing, right? And it was just too easy for him to be agile and zoom around. So what I ultimately did was I came up with this idea of following Spider-Man from in front. So if you kind of take the idea of Green Goblin is this finger and this is Spider-Man, And if Spider-Man's following Green Goblin, that's one thing, but he could zoom off in any direction and you get lost. So if Green Goblin is following Spider-Man, wherever Spider-Man goes, Green Goblin is following him, right? But if you take that same bit of math and you put the Green Goblin in front instead of behind, you treat it like he's chasing Spider-Man, but he's positioning himself in front of Spider-Man, if that makes sense. So what happens with the Green Goblin chase AI is he tries to position himself exactly in front of you. And the very first version I did, he did it literally exactly in front of you. So you'd stand on a rooftop, face the direction, he would zoom to be in front of you about 20 meters. And you turn around and he would zoom past you to be on the other side, 20 meters in front. And you would like kind of steer him around, having him be exactly in front of you. And that was too literal, obviously. But what we ultimately did was, it's okay, he wants to always follow you, but he wants to follow you from in front. So if you turn left, he turns left. If you turn right, he turns right. If you go up, he goes up. If you go down, he goes down. Whatever decision you make as a player is correct. Every single thing that you do is the correct choice, because he's following you. But that's too obvious. We didn't want players to actually know that that's what was going on. So there was basically, I want to say, 8 different positions that the Green Goblin wanted to follow you from. There was 3 in front, 2 on the sides, and then 3 in the rear. And he would switch between those different key points that he wanted to be relative to Spider-Man. So you're going along and he's always following you. No matter which way you turn, which way you face, he's always following you. It's just he wants to follow you slightly off to the left and in front. Well, what does that make the player do? The player sees him off to the left and they pull harder to the left now, right? Because they see that the Green Goblin is veered off to the left. But then we switch to different places on some regular cadence. And so then he switches. Now he wants to be behind you on the right side. And so then it creates this thing where the player is reacting, trying to chase after him. And the Goblin is kind of going up, back, up, off to the side, kind of playing on this entire plane around Spider-Man, wanting to be in front, wanting to be on the side. And then on a regular cadence, we give the player an opportunity to jump on the glider and punch the Goblin. You can't do it. Most of the time, we don't allow it. But on very particular cadence, we say, now's your chance, player. And so we bring the Goblin in to one of the 2 different sides, and he'll hang out there for a certain amount of time before he goes off into some other place. And your job as a player is to jump on there, beat him up, and get your points in. Everything else in that fight, in the chase, is all just fun. It's just there to kind of make you feel cool and hide the fact that this is going on, that he's actually following you. Now, if you actually pull too hard out of the line that he's going in, it would break off. It would say, okay, the game is up. I can't keep following you from front because you're going way off in a different direction. And in that case, he would do like this loop around strafing run on you, right? And so there was just all the smoke and mirrors piled on to that chase to hide the fundamental characteristic that he was following you from in front and that it was impossible to do wrong. And that's very important because the player base that we had, like the goal was to play pretty young players. Like we wanted to go down as low as 8, 10 years old or whatever. And so we couldn't have it be hard to follow him. We couldn't have it be hard to track him around all the different places. And so it would make every decision that you made as the player the correct one. And you couldn't lose him. He was always with you. It was just a matter of then covering that up so that way the player didn't realize that was what was going on. And maybe that's giving away the magic trick, but as a teaching tool for me as a senior mentor of new gameplay programmers, I bring this example out because it was the moment that flipped in my mind as a young developer myself, where I realized I wasn't making the AI to be smart. I wasn't making the AI to be clever. I was making the AI to make the player feel awesome. And as a gameplay programmer and a gameplay designer, That's the mindset you need to have always. How can I make the player feel awesome with whatever we're doing? And so I use this as a really simple example to teach, young up and coming programmers and designers how to approach the problem. How do we make sure the player has fun? How do we make it so it's hard for them to have a bad time? So the Green Goblin Flight AI was one of the coolest early moments of my career because it really solidified that mentality, which I've carried on through many, many games since, like Ultimate Spider-Man, and the Infamous games and Ghost of Tsushima. Like there's stuff from that mindset. It's slopped all over Ghost. I did a good chunk of the AI for Ghost, right? Not the individual sword fighting level, but almost everything else I had a really heavy touch on. And there's other people involved, obviously. But, especially the buddy AI in Ghost of Tsushima, where the buddy will follow after you or you can follow the buddy. That was very heavily based on the Green Goblin AI. So in Ghost, when a guy's following along with you, they will sometimes be in front, but still follow you from in front. I use the same trick later on in my career. So
no, that is a fascinating. I'm in the process of like developing a game, not like AI as like a horror game, but just that way of thinking is like it was hidden. It's like the smoke and mirrors were done so well in Spider-Man 1 that it wouldn't even think that was even a possibility.
Go back and play it
of what's
and look
going
for
on.
It. Go back and play it and look for it. You can see it. You can see it. If you know exactly what to look for, you can be like, oh, okay. And when you go too far off, he definitely breaks and goes around, or like you'll see him kind of like go left, right, be in front. But if you pull right, he goes right. If you pull left, he goes left. Like it's there. You can see it. So
it's a beautiful philosophy where it's just make the player feel cool. Because I know, like I've listened to like other like developer like commentaries and behind the scenes stuff. And there's like one that sticks out was like when they were making The Last of Us the first time. The issue they had with the zombies was that the zombie would just sneak up behind you and kill you, and the player would be like,
"That's no fun."
Yeah, exactly. And it kept happening, and they were like, "Right, we need to fix this because the zombie is it's doing what it's supposed to do, but the player cannot see it coming." But yeah,
you don't feel cool. Don't feel cool. There's a lot of stuff in Infamous where we intentionally have bad guys miss you in cool ways. So they'll shoot at you and intentionally be aiming off so that way the bullet goes right past your head. Right? Like when you shift your mindset around to say everything we do in gameplay AI, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? Everything you do is fundamentally rooted in how can we make the player feel cool? How can we make it easy to feel cool? How can we make it hard to feel terrible? And when you do that, and that's your mindset, that's where great games come from. Yeah. When people have that mindset, that's the differentiator between a game that feels amazing and a game that feels kind of like cruel or broken or mean, or like you can feel the difference when people know their job, that their job is to make sure you have a good time. And it has to be intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. And that's why some games are great and some games are not. And it's a difference in the developer's mentality. And so me as a mentor, one of my goals is to make sure gameplay people who come up under my tutelage know the difference and that they are making great content for players.
Yeah, that is it's a beautiful philosophy. So for diving back to the Goblin.
Yeah. I mean, I have a long career, so there's so much to talk about, right?
So for the Goblin, was there any like cut content for the boss battles on the Goblin? Because
I can't think of any.
It was just in the extras. There was like a construction area. I think it was concept art, and stuff.
You'd have to talk to the other guys for that. I don't remember anything. I was just doing things that they said do this, and I've got to do it. And, don't
Yeah,
know.
no worries. And then so since the game like heavily featured like a lot of aerial combat, was the lock-on system specifically built to deal with the aerial combat and any problems the camera had dealing with the enemies in the air?
Yeah, I mean that comes back to the idea of making it easy to succeed, right? And so when you have the difference between how Spider-Man could move and how these other enemies could move, you needed to give Spider-Man the tools to the player as Spider-Man to be able to understand the fight and succeed in the fight, right? And the lock-on stuff comes into that, where you actually help the player kind of track what's going on and being able to participate in it. So it's just kind of one of those things. Without it, it becomes really hard to play and not a good time.
Especially
you don't
with
feel
the camera
cool.
control. Like camera control was even very primitive back then. From what I remember for consoles.
I did some of the camera on Spider-Man 1, so I apologize for that one. That was a weird thing. I was kind of stuck between two different creatives in the form, I think primarily of Tomo and Chris Soares, and they had different ideas about how they wanted the camera to be, and I tried to please both of them, and I think I should have understood that was impossible and actually forced the three of us to come to an agreement that was less of a compromise. And I think Spider-Man 2's camera, which I think Andre did, was a real kind of like correction for that, where we actually realized we just have to commit to one style of camera. And I think it went for kind of like that Mario 64 style camera. And
what was this? Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to ask, what was the style or the difference in the style of cameras that you were kind of being torn between? Because camera control was really primitive back then.
It was a matter of tracking on you. So like, I don't remember who wanted what. I'm not going to like start a fight between them, but like one of them wanted really only like right stick control of the camera. Like the player is always right sticking the camera. And otherwise it kind of stayed steady and that you could run around and it would stay steady. Okay. And the other one wanted it to actually kind of like follow you around and kind
like
of
it was always tight on your back type of thing.
Oh no, there was never a over the shoulder camera, right? But just like, like for instance, in a Mario 64 style camera, if you run into the camera will turn and follow you like that. But that doesn't happen in Spider-Man 1. In Spider-Man 1, you run into the camera and you're just kind of running and the camera's just kind of backing up with you, right? And that should we turn the camera or not, and how much, was a really big conflict point between the creatives. And I was kind of stuck in the middle, not caring, like whatever you guys want, just tell me what you want to do, and like I would make it right for one person and it was wrong for the other. And that was part of the point where I got kind of frustrated with like, I just want to do something that has a definite answer now.
It has one solution.
Yeah, it just was just one. And so I think we ultimately went with this idea that you could press a button and it would just snap the camera around behind you. And that's fine, but in the end you end up pressing that button a lot more than you really should have had to. And I think there are better, more modern cameras. I think one thing that was noted in basically every review of the game was how bad the camera was. So
that's gotta sting a little
noticed
bit.
A lot of the other things, but they noticed how bad the camera was. And that was a lesson for me in my career, that you can't please everybody. And when you're dealing with creatives with different visions, you need to figure out who gets to choose. And then that person is in charge. Like I should have said, no, I'm not going to play the game and be between two people deciding what they want it to be. One person is going to be in charge of this, and it's going to be, you need to figure out who that is. And I think it probably would have been the designers, because that's their job. Right. And I just didn't, it was my second game. It's like 2 or 3 years into the industry. I didn't have the maturity to say, look, get it together, guys. This is not going to work for you to kind of try and push together two conflicting paradigms and make a result out of it. So, I wish the camera had been better on Spider-Man 1. I think there was some cool cameras. There was a cool tower camera that like spun around as you went up a tower.
Vulture?
I don't remember.
Vulture
it was
tower?
like went around this like circular staircase.
That was really cool. Yeah.
And so
that one was really cool.
the camera kind of just went around in a cylinder with you. I thought it was kind of like a 2D camera, but in 3D. And I really liked that little bit of camera work. But for the most part, the camera was pretty bad. Sorry about that.
But even back then, though, like, so released 2002, so around 2001 while it was developed, like, cameras were, like, super, super primitive. Like, even GTA 3.
Terrible camera.
Yeah,
the problem
it
is
was awful.
Mario 64 did a great job. Mario 64 did a great job with the camera. We just didn't take it. We should have just done a Mario 64 camera. Like, Nintendo had solved the camera problem, and it took many years for everybody to just settle down and be like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Nintendo Way's the best.
Like even Metal Gear.
We should have done that, and we didn't. Sorry.
It's like even Metal Gear. For the second one, they just kept the overhead system from the first one with the first person mode where you could shoot. So yeah. It's like, so it's interesting because like things that are like standardized now and taken for granted is like back then it was still trying to figure out how to do that. It's like, how do we control the camera? Like there weren't even like standardized controls. Like every game had like slightly different controls, even if they're in the same genre. So it's just, it's all really interesting. Yeah.
3D was new, right? How do you deal with a camera? Before that, everything had a fixed perspective. Either you were overhead or you were behind, or there was, what to do in a 3D space with a camera was an open question that developers were trying to solve. I think of that era, the Mario N64 camera was the best. And I don't think the developers of that era, myself included, gave them enough credit for how good a job they did. Right out of the gate, it was one of the first 3D games. Yeah. And they put so much attention, so much care, so much, effort into that camera. And everybody else has kind of floundered after that, even though there was a really great solution. I guess maybe we thought we could do better, but not really. Like years later, coming around, it's kind of the Mario camera. There's a couple cameras that now the industry's kind of settled on that work well, right? Ghost does kind of like a chase camera, more over the shoulder. But the main influence that all the modern cameras will go back to whenever they're in this kind of space is the Mario 64 camera. And we should have just done that. But we just weren't smart enough.
It's always interesting of like the double-edged sword of doing something really well, because if you do it too well, it looks effortless, and people just don't get it. It's like, oh, that looks easy. And it's like if you try to do it, you're like, oh, yeah, and it's just like, yeah, it's just stuff like that. Yeah, so Jimmy prototyped what would become the web swing mechanic of Spider-Man 2. So whenever he prototyped it in Spider-Man 1 and like showed it to you guys, did you get to like, or like what did you think of it? And did you get to like play with it or experiment on it before it was like just cut because there wasn't enough time to work on?
It never even, it's not something that got cut. It never even got greenlit in Spider-Man 1. It was a prototype and a demo, but basically it was impossible. We never thought we were going to ship with that in Spider-Man 1. We thought this is really cool, but we can't retool our game because I think it was a little later in the development cycle of Spider-Man 1. Like there was no way we could kind of go back and rebuild the game. Like we would have had to do Spider-Man 2. We would have had to do the streets. We would have had to do all the different things. Like it just wasn't going to be a possibility. So it didn't get cut. It just didn't ever
get
go
far enough to get
further.
cut.
It didn't get further. And it was a really cool prototype. The problem is it was done quickly. I think he did it in like a week, of just kind of that pent up, like overworked, kind of got to blow off steam sort of way that Jason did with the Playable Goblin, right? Like, and it was very literal. It was the ropes went to a place and you swung on the rope like Tarzan. And when you do it in a literal fashion, it's not great. There's a lot of like banging against the wall and kind of dragging along the wall and kind of like bang, 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 bang. It's just, you don't feel cool at all. And then I think his original version was just like going up to the top corners of the buildings because that was the easiest to kind of calculate.
Yeah, he said that.
And the buildings have to be built in a very specific way for swinging to work well. The streets need to be a certain width. The building heights need to be a certain height above the street. The building heights relative to each other in a neighborhood need to be at a certain kind of distance from each other. And without that, if you're just swinging around in some boxes or whatever, you're not having a great time. So when that prototype came out, it was revolutionary. It was super eye-opening. Everybody thought this was definitely the future, right? But was it fun or good? No, it was not, right? But that's okay. It didn't need to be. Like, he didn't spend time making it good. He just wanted to stick this out there and say, hey, what about this as a direction? And as a direction, I think it was phenomenal, right? And it was huge. Now, did it take a lot of work to get it to ship? Yeah, it did. Spider-Man 2, we did a lot of work. Can I diverge into Spider-Man 2 a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so when we went around to Spider-Man 2, we decided, yes, we're going to go back to that prototype. We're going to go back to physical swinging and try and make that work, because the whole idea of shooting your webs up into the ether and then just swinging wherever, it just felt so unfulfilling. It's like, oh, come on. Neversoft did it and they got away with it. And that's what kept coming down from Activision. It's like, just stick with the formula, guys. Just get the game out,
It worked. Don't break it.
Stop being creative, stop trying so hard. But it just felt so unfulfilling. You didn't get, you want that Tarzan experience of Spider-Man. Like that's part of the thing, right? And so Spider-Man 2, Jamie, had other things to do, but he gave us the prototype as the starting point. And there was a couple people who developed it. Andre did a lot of work on kind of choosing better swing positions. Jason Bear and I did a lot of the polishing for the shipping version, making it actually really good. And what that comes down to is a lot of cheating. A lot of things that kind of takes the pure physical model and then adjusts things to make it so that life is better. So we would, lengthen or shorten webs at certain points in your swing. We would, like, if you were coming up upon the ground and you were going to bump into the ground, we would actually shorten your swing just enough so that way you could run along the ground and then keep swinging, instead of smacking into the ground, right? Yeah. We would make sure you wouldn't get these little short degenerate webs that would swing you around a corner or smack you into a building. Like, there was a bunch of stuff that we had to prevent. We were constantly kind of tweaking with the web length. We took the anchors and then we actually had them physically off of the building. They weren't attached to the building. They were actually in space some distance away from the building. And then they would like kind of come in and out from the building depending on what we wanted to do with the swing. So there was a lot of cheating going on. And that cheating is to try and make it so that it feels better, because so much of it, if you imagine pinning to a building and you're swinging, so much of that wants you to smack into the building, right? Yeah. And smacking into the building isn't fun. It's not superhero. And so we needed to kind of like, as you're swinging along, we kind of made it a little bit more above you, but it's still in the direction. And the visual web went to the right place, but the actual physical web was usually offset. And it would go back to the building when you needed to kind of hide it from you. But it would be out there, and we would be shrinking and extending webs at leisure. So, it took a lot of kind of finessing to get it really playable. And the city for Spider-Man 2 was like Tomo and James Chow, who's one of our special effects artists, but also was kind of a Swiss Army knife of everything. Awesome. They like sat in his office, in James' office for, gosh, like 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning of Spider-Man 1 or 2 and built the entire island. And they built the entire island just as gray boxes, it was just boxes. And they discovered how wide the streets needed to be, how tall the buildings needed to be, all these rules, these discovered rules that we didn't know, right? We're discovering them, trying to figure out how to work in this movement style. But they discovered the language of what it was to be a Spider-Man web-swinging city. And the city got built strictly from a gameplay point of view. And it was edited on, and Tomo was in there playing, trying to get it feeling just right. And that showed in the final game. And it's something that I think also showed where we did it wrong in Spider-Man 3, because Spider-Man 3 was built from an art first point of view for the PlayStation 3. So the streets were too wide, the buildings' distances were too varied, all these things were wrong for the swinging model. And the thing that came to me as a programmer is, we're going to fix it in code. And so they said, go fix it. And I did my best, right? But it was fundamentally going to be a broken thing, because the world, for that swinging to work, the world has to be designed swinging first, everything else after. And the difference between Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 showcases that. Like in Spider-Man 2, it was literally gameplay first. And in Spider-Man 3, it was literally art first, fix it in code. And there's only so much that you can do fixing it in code and making it feel good. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the swinging prototype kind of happened. Like it came about in Spider-Man 1, kind of later in the game. There was no chance that we're going to do it. It was really rough, really unshippable, but brimming with promise and inspiration. It felt so right as a direction, even if the actual mechanics of it were really rough. And then if you build the city just right, if you go and fake a lot of things and kind of do these little micro tweaks and stuff, then you can get a really good swinging model out of it. And that's how we did it in Spider-Man 2. So that's a little bit of a divergence, right? There's so much of these games that is one long
story.
It's just like at certain points we had to ship something. And we had to kind of delay working on a certain thing until the next game. And there's choices that were made for us in certain cases. Activision wanted certain things. Like they always wanted swinging to be easier. Like they found that the Spider-Man 2 one was too expert level. And they wanted a more press go forward means go forward kind of approach. And that's what I put in place for Ultimate Spider-Man, was like this compromise between the physical swinging of Spider-Man 2 and press forward means go forward that Activision wanted. And in that game, I think the balance is struck pretty good. It's, I'd say, second to Spider-Man 2 in terms of swinging model, because the assists are there, right? It's like a driver and assist in a driving game. The assists are there, but they're subtle, and you can press forward to go forward, but you don't go the fastest and you don't go the coolest. If you want to go cool and fast, you have to swing like you swing in Spider-Man 2. So like if you did the expert style swinging in Ultimate Spider-Man, it still felt pretty good. So it was a little slow because of the data streamer. And because the lead designer didn't want it as fast as Spider-Man 2. He wanted it more kind of controllable and a little bit more slow paced. So anyway, physical swinging was cool, but it was out of scope for Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 1 was so fast a development cycle that we couldn't get off course too much. That's why I said it was so weird that the playable Goblin made it in, was because it was outside of those bounds. But this was the team. The team was creative and wanted to give you as much as we could. And I think that shows, right? I think that shows in these games. Like you can see us trying to make the games amazing.
like if it was nowadays, it would be straight up playable Goblin DLC 10 quid or something. Like,
Yeah, but
I
we'd
guess
have
just
to do the full
the
thing.
difference.
You know, we couldn't have done it in like a month at the end. Like we would have to go and actually make it all, back of the box. But we couldn't put it on the box because it was so janky. Like there was some levels that didn't quite play great, and the cutscenes were not there, the story wasn't there. So we couldn't like make it a DLC, right? It was just cool, and we wanted to get it out there so people could enjoy it in some way.
Yeah.
So that was just our mindset.
Yeah. No, it's also mad, just the cheats. Sorry, the cheating of how the Spider-Man 2 web swing mechanic worked relative to the building, where it looks like it's on the building. It was just never even considered that.
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's on the building. Often it's a little bit off because you get a better swinging if it's more vertical.
Yeah, like one of the things Jimmy said.
As you're going down the street, the more vertical your web is, the better it is. And so you want it to kind of go side to side, but you don't want it to go way over here because then that just pulls you in, smacks you into the building.
Yeah, so Jimmy,
if we were too far and we were too angle, we would kind of correct it up a little bit so that way it was a better feeling.
Yeah, so one of the things Jimmy said that, like, he said that when he was like talking about his prototype, he said that one of the mistakes he made was thinking that the web should attach to the corners of buildings, which apparently just like constantly drives you into like just walls and stuff. That was just like, right, this isn't good.
Yeah, and that's where Andre's work really helped out. He kind of created these cones that would like be detecting where the web should go. Where good webs were. Like we figured out what a good web attachment point was, and he kind of had these little feelers going out trying to find places, and it would choose a couple options, and then it would give you one when you actually press the button, and that changed a lot of things. I think the corners were just really easy place to start, like it's easy to know what the corner of a building is mathematically. And at a starting point when you're just doing that prototype, you don't know what a good web placement is going to be, right? You need to actually do it first and then discover those things. And that's what we ultimately had to do. Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah. So jumping back to the SM1 stuff. So it did, let's see. Yeah, so did Sony or Marvel or Activision or any of the higher ups, did they have any like prerequisites that had to be in the game, or were they just given the team just freedom to do whatever you think's best and then we'll review it type of thing?
Probably. I don't remember exactly. I do remember mostly the struggle against the constraints. So it wasn't so much... I mean, there may have been things that we had to put in, but it was more things that we couldn't put in were their main problems.
Okay.
So like we had a very limited set of characters we could use. We had a very limited set of, we had to make sure the spotlight stayed on the movie story, right? We couldn't have any boss that outshined the Green Goblin, right? And so we had to choose people who were lower tier. And it wasn't clear exactly where the movie franchise was going to go. And so we had to dodge any bosses that might be a main villain in a future movie.
Like Lizard.
And there was a lot of kind of infighting between Marvel and their rules and their lawyer kind of boundaries, and Sony and their rules, and then Sam Raimi and his thing, and then what Activision wanted, and then Treyarch. And ultimately, Treyarch just wanted to make the coolest, most amazing Spider-Man game. But there was a lot of other forces that were trying to keep us from doing that. Right? And so we just tried to do the best we could with the boundaries that we were given. And I think we did okay. I think, we got better at it in the next game. But, Spider-Man 2 was kind of light on content because we spent so much of our effort getting the technical things right. that there was very few side quests you could do. There was a lot of repetition in side quests, and there was, like, I felt like we could have used another 6 months of just beefing up the content side of the game to really make it amazing.
That's interesting that you say that, because it doesn't feel like it's light. It's almost like the core getting from A to B is so much fun that it doesn't kind of register that maybe there's not massive amount to do, because it was just enjoyable.
That's the fun part of the game, is being Spider-Man, right?
Swinging,
but if you look at a very content heavy game like Uncharted or something, right? I feel like we could have put in more hard content, hard in terms of physical, concrete elements, not as in difficulty. There was very few side quests that you could do in the city. And so saving the girl's balloon and stopping the mugging. And I feel like we could have used 3 or 4 times the number of variety there. Right. So I felt like we could have used some more months of development time to add more content, to do more of what like a GTA would do in terms of just making new discoveries and new awesome everywhere you look. But we had a tight time budget, and we put so much effort on just the technical capability of being able to do that game that some of the content I don't think was quite as polished or as variety as we would have liked. But when you're going day and date with a movie, there's a certain point where you have to cut and say, this is it, this is the best it's going to be. And we always just talked about the next game. We'll do that. We'll put that in the next game.
Get it in the next one, guys. But yeah, so back to SM1. So, so in the level Razor's Edge, there is a UFO Easter egg that is like unbelievably easy to miss. Do you have any recollection of that being put in the game, or why was it put in the game? How was it put in the game?
I don't remember that particular thing. I do know who put all the Easter eggs in the game. And there's more that you haven't found, I'm pretty sure, because some of them are very, very hard to find that require very particular timing, looking in the particular place at a particular time.
That's interesting.
But this person wanted to try and make things pretty hard to find because it wasn't really on the books. It was just kind of stuff that got snuck in.
Was it James Chow? Chris? I was talking to Chris. He
did add a lot of chaos to the game, so it could have been James.
Are you keeping this tight to the chest here?
I don't know if James would want me to say what he did or did not do. But if you did talk to him,
I have not yet.
He might be a very interesting one to talk to, because he certainly knows where the bodies are buried. On that one.
Beautiful choice of words.
Yeah, I mean, just you couldn't stop this team from being creative and doing things, and so whether we were given permission to do it or not stuff still kind of happens sometimes. It was just kind of a team, we were just so driven to make this wild and fun and cool and just kind of, is a thing. So I don't know much about the UFO thing. I mean, I do know that someone may have put a lot of little Easter eggs in the game that are very hard to find. I'm pretty sure at some point in one of the games, Tomo or Aki's whiteboard is in the game somewhere. Like the whiteboard was consistently being upgraded with additional drawings throughout the development of the game. And at one point, a photograph got taken of the whiteboard, and it made it into a texture somewhere in the game. I'm not sure if that was ever found, but that kind of stuff, it's around.
That is beautifully intriguing. Just in terms of job role clarity, it is the programmers that would be responsible for that.
Oh, no.
Artists too?
No. Well, artists could do it, but generally it's going to be the designers.
Okay.
Because the designers have access to scripting languages. scripting language. And so they can kind of make things happen in a level based on some programmer type logic, but it's lighter weight than the actual programming. And so they tended to do that kind of shenanigans. The programmers, usually we were too busy getting the actual code written to be clever in that way. Plus our code is not run in those kind of circumstances. Like the actual story of the game is told through the scripting code. So, yeah.
Very, very intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely look to the designers for any of that kind of stuff. Sometimes the artists might hide something in a texture, but it usually wouldn't be dynamic. It would just be like something that if you looked at a particular angle, like the textures would line up and it would show you something or something. But that's harder to pull off. So usually those kind of like timing based things and kind of like if you do X, Y, and Z, you get to see the bonus thing is all based on the level scripting.
The secret system. So if you remember, the secret system was like, it was kind of like a currency that you could use to like buy cheats like big head mode, different skins and stuff like that. So like in the very, very, very first level, when you're swinging across the buildings and stuff, you could stumble across like a side mission where it's a woman that's like lost her handbag. She's like, oh, you got to go find my handbag. And then you have to go find it, bring it back to her. And it's like, oh, secret, complete, whatever. But later throughout the game and the later levels, it became a much more simplified of like walk into a secret room, and you get the points. So I was wondering, was the secret system originally meant to be something slightly more like beefed up, with like little side quest missions, but perhaps to me it looked like time restraints was just like, we'll cut out a lot of this and keep it simple.
I mean, that's probably going to be a design question. A lot of those kind of little content secret things it comes mostly down to the designers, and they're writing the scripts for each of the levels and they're doing all that kind of stuff. So, if you got a chance to talk to Tomo or Aki or James Chow was nominally an effects artist, but he was also kind of a designer. He's kind of like this amazing do anything kind of guy, who kind of filled in a lot of cracks. And I think probably, you would need to talk to a designer to know exactly what the plan was for that stuff. But I think probably it was intended to be more like those early things. And then just production reality got such that we didn't have schedule time to do more dedicated quest-driven secrets. Right.
Yeah.
And like it was such a tight project time-wise. So...
yeah, that was cool. And then just from your recollection or what you remember, was there much content that got cut that you're aware of or
not aware
passed by your desk? None.
Maybe, but we were barely able to get enough content done for the game itself that shipped. That we didn't have the option to cut. Wasn't a whole lot left to be able to cut. I think we may have cut a level or two, I think the subway had an extra level in it at one point that we cut out, just kind of like it didn't serve enough of a unique feeling that we just didn't feel like it needed to be in the game or whatever. Probably some stuff like that, but for the most part, the content that we made is the content that went in the game because we didn't have time to really fine tune it.
Yeah. That's cool. And then on to the difficulty curve of the game. For me as a kid, I like just could not. So I was probably like 10 years old. I couldn't get past like the Oscorp levels where it's like you're stealthing about and the alarms go off and bullets start firing and everything like that. Just towards the end of the game, like the difficulty curve, like it started to properly spike. Was it always intended to be like that?
You'd have to talk to the designers. I don't think so. I think any spike in the difficulty probably comes from us not realizing it was there. Because when you get so good at a game and you're thinking, I'm making the end of the game content, you're thinking, oh, I'm making the end of the game content. It should be kind of challenging for me. But I'm very good at the game, right, at that time. Or whoever I is in this circumstance. So, a lot of times you have to have other people play the game and tell you that it's too hard. And then you say, oh, okay. and you tune it down. So I think if there was uneven difficulty, it's just probably because we didn't notice and fix it.
Yeah, that was fair enough.
It probably should have been smoother.
Yeah. So there's only a couple left. So I'm just gonna like straight up ask you: was the web targeted mode or 3? Is that anything to do with you,
Jason Bear?
Jason Burr, okay, and then web combat moves.
I mean,
were
big head
definitely
mode,
Jason.
Playable Goblin, like things that are cool that Spider-Man can do generally funnel down to Jason Bear. Like I said, he's just constantly coming up with crazy cool ideas. So he'd be the guy there.
Cool. Yeah, so just throughout the development of the game, were there any like funny bugs or just like, you know, like crazy stuff that you encountered?
Well, I mean, I mentioned kind of the giraffe swinging. I mean, that wasn't really a bug. That was just kind of us goofing around. But I do remember one bug. I'm not sure how much explanation it would have required, but basically the symptom of the bug was Kraven the Hunter. He's in some zoo or something hunting Spider-Man in a zoo for some reason. And he's got these potions that he drinks to power himself up so he can actually fight Spider-Man because he's just a normal guy. And there was this bug that just kind of happened at one point where he would run up to be kind of so that Spider-Man could see him and not blocked by any kind of stuff in the way. And he had to be a certain distance away. And then he would just drink his potion over and over and over and over. He'd just stand there, just guzzling down potion. And then if you broke line of sight or walked too far away, he'd run up, get in line of sight, and then start drinking his potion again. And so we called this the drunken public bug because Kraven wanted to drink, but he wanted to make sure that people were seeing him do it. And this was a really funny bug, but it took a while to figure out. And Jason, who's sharing my office at the time, was looking at it all day long. He'd been at it for like 12 hours or something. He was just totally burnt out and tired. I said, dude, just go home. And I'll look at it. It was right at the end of the project. We had to get these bugs fixed. We were close to submitting, you know, a candidate and for pressing. And so I was like, I'll look at it. You go home, get some sleep. We'll see what I can get, and maybe tomorrow we can fix it. So I fixed it in about an hour. And how it happened was his code that he had written was so long in one kind of function that the compiler got confused and just lost track of its data. And that was ultimately what was wrong. And so how I fixed it was just, I was looking at this code. It was so long and hard to understand what was going on that I just broke it up into smaller pieces. And by doing that, I made the bug go away. And so the next morning he came back and said, I fixed it. He said, what? That's impossible. And I said, I just broke up the code and it just went away. And he said, I don't believe it. And so he went in and like, traced it down to the actual code that the computer generates and traced it in memory and found out that there was a compiler bug that was causing the code to get confused. But it was really funny in kind of how that bug presented itself, because everybody got a kick out of the drunken public bug where you're fighting Kraven and he's just running up, hey, you can see me, right? And he starts drinking. And it's just a weird side effect to a compiler problem in the code. So let me see. Is there any other weird bugs that we said? I can't think of any offhand. That was the one that really kind of like stuck with me. I think there was one, it's not really a bug, but a thing that we had to fix. There was a way in the Green Goblin fight at the end where you're fighting on a bridge or something, and you could have him fall off to his death. And it was really hard. Like you could punch him and you'd like fall off or whatever. And it was really hard for us to make it so that was impossible to do, and we just didn't have time to fix it properly. And so there was an escape clause written in the code that would just teleport his glider from wherever it was to be right beneath his feet and put him on it when he fell off the bridge. And then the debug text would say, "It's a miracle," and then he would start flying around on his glider. So his glider would just teleport to catch him if he ever fell off the bridge. So not really a bug, I guess kind of a bug, but like the fix for it, we just totally cheated and just like said, oh, he's flying now. Because we didn't want it to end in like a Batman fashion where you like throw a guy off the building and he probably doesn't die. Like that wasn't how we intended the fight to finish. So we had to make sure that we did something. So we had a miracle catch Green Goblin out of the air as he was falling. So
brilliant.
I don't know. Those are the things I could think of, I guess.
Cool.
So long ago.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
You know.
So was there anything that you wanted in the game that didn't make it into the game? Like any personal...
I wanted the city. I wanted to go down to street level and solve crimes at the street level.
Yeah.
Which is why, I pushed so hard for that in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy good in Spider-Man 2, especially compared to GTA, because I think it released around the same time as Vice City.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, and it was like Vice City Vice City was Vice City, but it still had the loading screens between the islands, and it still had the bad, in my opinion, but just bad camera work, where Spider-Man 2 had fixed
we didn't
those
do
problems.
any loading screens in Spider-Man 2, did we?
Yeah, I don't think there
maybe
was.
Just the initial load into the world. I mean, this is diverging a bit into Spider-Man 2, but even when you went into the, what is it, Madison Square Garden or something, some stadium for a Mysterio fight.
Oh, Mysterio? Yeah, something.
That is like, I want to say like 1,000 meters underground. And what we did is you would go into this one room, and we had an exact copy of that room, 1,000 meters underground. And once you were in that room moving around, we would teleport you down to the lower version. And we would teleport you to the lower version once enough of the actual stadium had loaded in, because the data streamer had to switch from loading the city in to loading this giant stadium, because the stadium's not physically the same size as the stadium in the outside world. And so we had to kind of like switch the data loading, so it's loading all this stuff. And we actually just made that room that allowed you to get into the stadium so complex to navigate that it would take you a certain amount of time. So that way we had enough time to load the stadium underground. So we engineered the gameplay there to take time, to buy us time to load that stadium. And by doing so, we skipped the loading screen. So those little tricks.
That is phenomenal. So because I don't remember like precisely, but is that just one seamless motion then from the player's perspective?
Yeah.
Dude, that's so a straight up teleportation.
Yeah, it's just you're teleporting from one room to another, and they're exactly the same.
But from the player's perspective, they're still just like walking forward,
around,
so to speak.
And then it's just like, one frame you're in one room, and one frame you're 1,000 meters under the ground. So we just do it, and you just didn't know it. And since it was the exact same room, and they actually got off at certain points. Like somebody would decorate something in the upper room, and then it wouldn't be in the lower room. And you teleport, and it would disappear, and that it was a bug. So we had to actually make sure copy. But there's just 2 copies of the room, and that allowed us to kind of airlock in and get that other stuff loaded. So we wanted no loading screens in Spider-Man 2, like 0. Loading into the initial game, I tried to make it so that there wasn't even a loading screen there. I'm not sure if there is. It's been so long.
I can't remember.
But I hated loading screens, and I just didn't want them. I wanted the game to just stream everything, But I was proud of my machine. I wanted it to. It felt like a failure if I had to kick to a loading screen. So we did everything we could to avoid them. So
yeah, dude, that's sick. So back to SM1.
You have a hard time. Because so much cool stuff happened in SM2. Like SM2 was the explosion of creativity from the constrained SM1 development. Like we were just kept on the rails, and then we just exploded once we had a new project to work on. And that's why it seems so dramatic of a change. It's just this pent up creativity. So.
Pent up, perfect term for it. So what was your favorite thing during the development of Spider-Man 1? Was it like just something you were proud of, like a mechanic or a specific thing that you finally got working? Or was it just like company culture?
I was so tired that I think my favorite thing was having it be done. But aside from that, content-wise, I was really happy when it was done, because it meant we got to do all the things that we weren't able to do in Spider-Man 1. Like we could start doing the physical swinging, we could start doing the data streaming, we could start doing all the things that we wanted to do, but we couldn't. We wanted to go down to the street level in Spider-Man 1, but we couldn't. And so being done was one of my favorite things because it meant that we unlocked possibility again. But in terms of what we did in Spider-Man 1, my favorite things, I mean, I really like the Shocker fight, like the tunnel bit that you lead up into, and then he's like bouncing around the room, shooting his beams at you and stuff. I liked it so much that I did it again in Spider-Man 2, but just kind of made it different. And kind of revisited the Shocker well because I enjoyed that fight so much. And I tried to make the Spider-Man 2 version better than even the Spider-Man 1 version. So that was one of my favorite moments was working on that because I think that came out really well and I think that was a lot of fun. I think the Green Goblin flight AI was really fun because it was so non-fail. Like there was no way to not enjoy it. Everybody who played it thought they were awesome and they couldn't mess up. And that was a real triumph for me because it's such a hard problem to have an aerial chase like that feel good. Yeah. That the fact that we had come up with a solution that actually did make it feel good and make it kind of zero failure, basically, and zero bad feels, and we hit it. I don't think people noticed what we were doing.
No, definitely not.
And so I think that was a real triumph on my end, and it was definitely an epiphany for me as a game developer. It's set up my kind of whole paradigm that I've carried with my whole career since of how do you make the player feel cool? How do you make them feel like the hero? How do you make them feel like they're doing awesome stuff? Can you set up combos for them to execute? Can you prepare things so that way they get to cash it in, and all of that just started with the Green Goblin flight AI. So I think that was probably one of my favorites. I thought it was really fun to explore a new platform, like getting in the hardware level, like doing the PlayStation 2 port, being on the cutting edge of PlayStation 2 development. Not a lot of teams had kits. We had one, we had two, and we were doing it, and we were dealing with janky Japanese documentation and weird hardware update stuff and just all these things, but we got to be on the cutting edge. And like, I was real proud of having a PS2 dev kit at work. It's like they were rare and I had one, and it was a cool piece of technology that I was pushing the limits of. So I think those three things were probably my favorite. I think the team, I didn't like the work hours, right? The work hours were grueling and they're terrible, but it was kind of like, not to downplay what it's like being in a war, but it was kind of like being in a war with your platoon, right? We were in a difficult situation all the time together, stressed out, pushed, trying to do the best we could. And we all bonded it was a small team too. I think at most we got up to like 30 people, right? And so we bonded and we've been kind of friends, even though we don't talk very often. There's this connection point. I just ran into Martin Donlan, who's at Riot, and I ran into him at Riot headquarters the other day. And I was like, dude, it's been forever, like we're connected by that shared trauma and the shared kind of effort of doing that thing, and so everybody who was a part of that has that kind of burned into their soul at this point. So there's this strong affection for everybody who was on that team, so, and there's Anna Donlan, who's ultimately Martin married, is now a VP at Riot, I think. She's the head of the Valorant team. So she's gone on to big, great things from her days on the Spider-Man team. And it's just, I think Michael Vance and Wade Brainerd are in like high up positions at Activision tech, like tech directors for the whole company and stuff like that. So like this little tiny team has like exploded across the industry, and everybody's doing new cool things, and we're all kind of bound together in that early period where we squeezed out those games under almost impossible circumstances, So I don't know. There's just I guess the connection to the teams is the last thing that really matters to me on that one. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Like there was equal parts of all that. So
yeah, the line always brings me back to The Simpsons. Mr. Burns, it was the best of times. It was the blurst of times.
yeah, exactly. My least favorite thing on Spider-Man 1 was the camera. That makes it the hardest for me to go back and play now. I know I was involved in the camera, and that makes me extra guilty. But I wish I could play that game with the Spider-Man 2 camera in place. And that makes it the hardest of the 3 games that we did. I didn't do much on Spider-Man 3. I only did about 3 months before I moved to Japan. But so like of the Spider-Man games that I worked on, like the camera was probably the one big failing.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So yeah, my career, let's see. So, I mean, that era was really interesting. Like I said, we worked really hard, lots of hours. Like at one point they had us check in before we left to make sure that we weren't leaving before 12 hours was up. There was a point during Spider-Man 2, there was a point where I think it was Spider-Man 2, where they had a laundry service that we could bring in our laundry to do because we were never at home ever. And so we just like people were losing track of their whole life. The tail end, I think it was the last 3 or 4 months of Spider-Man 2, I think we got 3 or 4 days off total. We were working 7-day weeks. Sunday was a treat day at just 10 hours. And we were doing like 14 to 16 most of the other days. 7 days a week, 3 days off, like 1 day off a month. And so they were doing our laundry with this laundry service. We were eating 3 meals a day at the studio. And years later, somebody asked me something about like, what were you doing back in 2001? And I thought about it and I couldn't think of anything. And I said, I worked. That is all I did. I just worked. And that kind of made me real sad. Where I just realized that like, I go back to The Princess Bride where he's like, I've just sucked 1 year of your life away. And I may go as high as 5, and I just feel like to me that was Activision at the time. And maybe it wasn't Activision's fault. I don't know, but I really burned out pretty hard at the end of that, And so it's an Ultimate Spider-Man. I made the ultimatum. I was like, I leave in at 7:00, hell or high water every day. And you take it or leave it, and they took it. And people were like, why is he leaving? Like, why does he get to go and we have to stay? And I'm like, look, I made a deal when I came on this team. And if you want to get a deal, you better go talk to him because this was my condition. And that wasn't enough to put myself back together. Like I was still too just burned out and just broken. And ultimately, like I went on a month-long vacation to Japan just to kind of like put myself back together. And I decided that it was the right place, but it was not enough time. Like I needed to be in Tokyo for longer, and it felt like that was the place I needed to be. So I put together like a plan to go over there for school. And I spent 3 years kind of just like rebuilding myself from kind of nothing before I felt like I could work again. And I thought I was going to go into publisher side because the publisher people always got to go home at 5. And then the developers had to just keep working. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just
corporate
be tech.
always gets it much easier.
Yeah, maybe I'll just go tech on the publisher side. And so that's why I got the business master's degree. I was thinking, I'll just go publisher side. But ultimately, Sucker Punch promised to never, ever make me work overtime. When I joined Sucker Punch after coming back from Japan, I went through 7 interviews and I asked every single interviewer what their overtime policy was. And I got the same answer roughly. And then like the last interview with the owner of the studio, Sucker Punch, I made him say in 3 different sentences that I would never have to work overtime. And he did. And I was like, okay, that'll do, because I was so adamant that like I knew what it did to me to work too much.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll give you great 40 hours, but at the end of that 40 hours, I'm done because I know what it does to me. And that was the condition that allowed me to get back into game development. If I couldn't have gotten that deal with Sucker Punch, I wouldn't have rejoined. And that's how people spin out of this industry. They burn out, and then because it was it's so unfair. So I don't know. I mean, that was my little Japan adventure. And then I went to Sucker Punch, and I shipped Infamous 2 without working a day of overtime. And at the end, I didn't feel exhausted. I didn't feel hollowed out. I didn't feel broken. And I wasn't the only one. Like the whole team didn't have to work overtime. And they just scaled the content to the schedule rather than scaling the people to the schedule. And it was an epiphany for me that you could ship a game without working overtime, that it was possible. And I felt good. I felt ready to go. Right after Infamous 2, I was like, what's next? Let's go. Like, it didn't feel like I wanted to just collapse in a gutter and die. So, it just kind of changed everything. So I put a lot of value into Sucker Punch and kind of how they helped me kind of get my career back together and do it in a way that was better balanced. I think the EA spouse thing helped a lot for the industry. There was a real big kerfuffle in like 2004.
Rockstar had one as well, I recall. Wives of Rockstar, I think it was called.
Yeah, I think it's 2004 was the EA one, something like that. And EA did a big correction after that, and everybody else kind of had to fall in line and like at least put on a good face. And so the industry got a lot better after that. It still has hot spots of terribleness, but I think it's a lot better since. So I don't know. The career has been really interesting. It's been a lot of ups and downs. Like that Spider-Man era, I loved a lot, but I would not do it again because it was too grueling, But I'm real proud of the stuff that came out of that era. I always wanted to get a Game of the Year. I always wanted to get one, and I never did. Spider-Man 2, not Game of the Year. Ultimate Spider-Man, nope. Infamous 2, didn't happen. Second Son, didn't happen. There was always one or two other games that always beat us out.
What did Spider-Man 2 get beaten by? It had to have been Grand Theft Auto.
Probably. There was always one or two extra games that would just do it, And they never wanted to give a Game of the Year title to a movie tie-in game. Like the idea at the time was that movie tie-ins were garbage throwaway games. And we wanted to prove that wrong. We wanted to prove they could be really good games.
Yeah.
And we didn't get, I think we got a lot of retroactive credit for it. Like people remember that game where they might not remember whoever won Game of the Year. Like you remember Spider-Man 2, right? Yeah. I don't think the Spider-Man formula has been done better since Spider-Man 2 until Insomniac. I think whoever's doing them now, like Insomniac. They finally broke the trend of like worst games. Like it was Spider-Man 2 was the peak, and then it was just like worst games. And then Insomniac came out and said like, let's go back to the Spider-Man 2 model. And then they improved on it. They did a fantastic job. And of the people
Game of the Year.
Yeah, but of the people who could kind of criticize their work on the Spider-Man swinging, I'm probably one of the few people in the world who could say plus or minus like what did they do, because I set the standard with the Spider-Man 2 model. Like I was the last one in the room on how the final Spider-Man 2 swinging worked. There was a lot of people who contributed to it, but I was the final bit of polish. And so when I looked at all the other games, I'm like, garbage. Nobody's doing it good. And then the Insomniac one, I said, okay, all right, I approve. Like finally somebody did it right.
They get it.
That really made me happy when they did that, because it felt like such a dropped ball that nobody was able to do it. And then they did it right. And I'm like, oh, good job, guys. So if any of them happen to like catch this video, good job. Those games feel really good. So
yeah, I remember the year that Insomniac Spider-Man 1 came out, they were nominated for like, I don't know, like 18 awards, and they lost to all of them.
Probably to Uncharted
Even though
or
the game was
Last of Us or
phenomenal.
something.
It was God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 beat them
Well,
everywhere. And it was like,
those
that
are
is just unfortunate timing.
Those are good games, though.
Yeah, it's just like any other year they would have taken.
I never got Game of the Year. The closest I ever got, maybe my next game from Riot, I'll get Game of the Year. I don't know. We'll see. But the closest I ever got was Ghost of Tsushima. Didn't get many games. I got like a couple really outlier outfits that got Game of the Year, but most of them went to Last of Us 2, right? But we got a Famitsu 40 for Ghost of Tsushima. And if you're not familiar with Famitsu, it's like the premier gaming magazine in Japan, Famitsu. And they do a review of titles where they have 4 reviewers and they do a scale of 1 to 10. And getting a perfect 40, 10, 10, 10, 10, right? From Famitsu is like crushing it. You know, not many games do that. And so that was kind of like my game of the year, was Ghost of Tsushima getting a perfect 40 from Famitsu. It was like,
nice.
And my wife was reading a lot of like the forum content and stuff after Ghost shipped in Japanese. And she said like, they really love it. Like the Japanese people really thought we did a good job. And we tried so hard on that game to make it really true to Japan and really feel right and do good for that country and that people and that mythos and all that things. And to have people there embrace it and accept it and celebrate it and say, good job, was really rewarding. Like having Famitsu give us the perfect 40. And it's like, thanks, we did it, you know? So I've always been fighting for that game of the year. It's been tough, but a lot of near misses.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this secret project gets it whenever it comes out.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, Riot makes really good games. So,
yeah,
usually they don't get qualified for Game of the Year kind of contests because usually they give that to story-driven games and things like that. So we'll see, but it's going to be good. I promise that. We got a really good team. I just can't tell you anything about it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Let me think. That covers all the main points. I'd love to, like, at a later date talk about the other games. It wouldn't be for like a long while, but I'd love to get a conversation about the other Spider-Man games.
Yeah, Spider-Man 2 and Ultimate Spider-Man, there's a lot of interesting things to say. I think Spider-Man 2 has probably the most, but Ultimate Spider-Man, I did the playable Green Goblin on that one, and I did all the player control for the Spider-Man. And I think the people who've played it really like what we did with that game. It was a different take.
In Ultimate?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a different take on things, but I think it was a really good game. The thing that it didn't have was the swinging wasn't quite as good as Spider-Man 2. So the Japanese version, I've got it right here, actually. I just bought a copy because I wanted to make sure I had a copy. The Japanese version of Ultimate Spider-Man.
So I'll just do like the ending bit here, but I do want to ask you just a couple of things after. So I'll just like do the official ending here. So that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much, Greg, for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Sure thing. It was fun to reminisce and talk about the old times. I'm glad people still want to know about what we did back then. So I hope people who are listening or watching can enjoy some of the tales of days gone by.
That's good. Well, thanks again, man. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you didn't enjoy the video, like, comment, share, and subscribe.
I don't know. I was surprised it was Spider-Man 1 you wanted to talk about, because everybody wants to know about Spider-Man 2. Like, that is the game. That is the game for my career that when I mentioned that I worked on it, people are just like, at least the people of a certain age, they're just like, oh, you worked on that game? That game was the game, you know?
Yeah. So from my view, like, Spider-Man 2 obviously is what it is, but I don't know, Spider-Man 1, I think it gets understandably outshined, but it doesn't detract from what it was at that time, especially with like the Playable Goblin. Like this was like the first massive movie game outside of like maybe GoldenEye. Like it's I don't know. I really liked it.
GoldenEye broke a
And
lot of
plus,
rules. I mean, and we wanted to hit that mark where GoldenEye was like a movie game that wasn't a bad game. That was a really good game.
yeah,
And when Spider-Man 1 came out, we got the credit. People said, this is more than a movie tie-in. This is a good
yeah,
game. It got
it
outshined by
was
Spider-Man 2 because we did even better, right? But we really wanted to make it not a cash in. We really wanted to make it a great game. It just was so tight and we stumbled a little, so it's not as
yeah.
good as
It
the things that came later.
Yeah,
So
100%. But like one of the things I do love is the things that made Spider-Man 2 great. They started in Spider-Man 1 as well. They just got cut, or it's like, dude, we don't have time. It's like, oh, but this had promise. Like
they were
it's just
foundation. Like Spider-Man 1 was the
yeah,
foundation. And like I said, it was that explosion of creativity. Like we had all these ideas that we wanted to do with it, and we just kept on not being able to get them in. And everything was always like next game, next game, next game. And so when we started Spider-Man 2, it's like we had this pile of momentum of like all the things that we built up that we wanted to do, and it just
yeah,
crashed out, and the technology was just right there where it could actually do that. We literally were. I did a check at the time. Nobody else had shipped multi-platform data streaming before us, and I believe we were the second all three platform game. I think FIFA beat us by a couple months, but there was a time there that we were going to be the first game on all three platforms. But we didn't quite make it. But we were the first one to do the data streaming, and that was a
yeah,
huge effort, because each one, like I said, has their own quirks and their own memory data and their own everything, and we had to come up with solutions for each one. And GTA didn't have to. They could just lean directly on what the PlayStation could do. Now it's more common that things will come out multi-platform, or at least in the era that
it's a lot more simple.
there was three
Hit
platforms in
hit.
that era, like the 360 and the Wii and all that existing at once. Like people could still do them at the same time, but now it's kind of tightening back up. Like Xbox is falling apart, PlayStation's kind of winning, and
Yeah,
Nintendo's doing their own thing on the side, so it's kind of changed now. But that was an interesting era. Like the hardware on the PS2 was really good. It had some quirks, especially rendering. It was difficult to get it rendering nicely. Wade was a miracle worker in getting that to render nicely. But it was a good foundational piece of hardware. Otherwise, the PS3 was really hard to get the most out of. I think it would be really interesting to kind of get Tomo's take on developing the Spider-Man 2 swinging model and the city with James. Like my recollection of it, they were in an office kind of across the hallway from me. Me and Jason Bear were in an office and they were across. And it was just James Chow's office, and Tomo was in there with him. And they were in there for like 3 weeks, just making the whole city and playing it and making it feel fun to swing around. And like that, what came out of that was like the heart of the game, And one thing that really strikes me when I'm working on a game is like I would find myself just getting lost playing the game for half an hour, 45 minutes. I'm just playing, just goofing off, having fun, and completely lose track and just go into the Zen kind of moment, And Spider-Man 2 was that. Like you just get lost in it and just swing around and just play.
So if you want to just briefly explain what a platform programmer is, and like what your day-to-day duties entailed during Spider-Man 1's development.
Right. Well, these days, actually, kind of from Spider-Man 2 on, I've kind of styled myself as a gameplay systems programmer, which is the border between low-level systems work, engine stuff, getting things to be there and to be in the right shape and to get onto the screen and all that stuff, and then the actual gameplay portion where the fun happens. And I kind of like slot myself right in the middle. The Spider-Man 1 era, I was doing that, but I didn't really call it that. I was the PlayStation 2 programmer. I did the port from Dreamcast to the PlayStation 2. There was two people working on that port. One of them was Wade Brainerd, who did all of the graphic stuff, and then anything that wasn't graphics was me. So input controls, disk reads, sound, all that kind of stuff. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna. So was the, I guess the foundation, the core of Spider-Man 1, was that built originally like for the Dreamcast and then ported to the other consoles, or what?
Yeah. So how that works is generally game developers in that era would have a engine that they used at that company, and they would just kind of change its face from game to game to game. So the engine at Treyarch was originally created for Die by the Sword, which was their first game. And then their second game, the sequel, went to Dreamcast from PC. Die by the Sword was PC. Dreamcast was the sequel, which was Draconis, which was Die by the Sword 2. And it was kind of a simplified version of Die by the Sword, which was very kind of like a physical simulator for sword fighting. So Draconis was the main engine that we were working from. And that became a game that we did for Mattel called Max Steel. It's basically a Barbie-sized toy for boys, was their idea for it. So he's kind of like, dressed in a superhero kind of outfit, going around being a super spy, I think. But it was like a toy like this big. And Mattel wanted us to make a game. And so we took the Draconis engine, which was on Dreamcast, and we turned it into Max Steel. And that game was really tight. That was 9 months from inception to shelf. And usually it takes about 3 months at the end to kind of like go gold and put it in print it and put it into stores. So it was 9 months just end to end. It was super fast, but it paid really well.
Do you mean the final 3 months are not game development? It's more the business?
Oh, I mean, there's 1 month there. Like one of those 3 months is basically development is done. And we're doing bug fixing and cert, which is like getting it to conform to all of the platform rules that the platform maker makes, and passing through all the bug testing and stuff like that. The main development on Max Steel was 6 months. And then we did 1 month of kind of bug fixing, and then it was 2 months until it was on the shelf. So that was lightning fast, and it was really brutal. That was my first game in the industry, and the hours were just atrocious, and it was really tough. And that was a tough game because we wanted to make it fun and really cool, but Mattel was not interested in fun or cool. They wanted it simple because their audience was like 6 years old So basically you could punch your way through the whole game. But there was all these other things you could do. You could set traps, you could do all this other crazy stuff, but we weren't allowed to make any of it kind of gameplay required. Because the target audience. And so people reviewing the game is like, this game is very strange because it's very simple and dumb, and yet there's all these extra things you can do and none of it is required. And that's because the team was just so creative. We just wanted to do better, and we weren't allowed to. So we just did the best we could with what we were allowed to do. And that same energy kind of carried forward into the Spider-Man games. You can sense that energy, that pent up kind of like going around what we're allowed to do and pushing the boundaries and making it as awesome as we could within the time frame and the rules that were set upon us. So from Max Steel, which was still Dreamcast, which was my first game in the industry. So it's a real great start. Max Steel, right? Nobody even knows what it is. But immediately after that, we got the Spider-Man one from, I think Neversoft was doing it before that, right?
Yeah.
And they were going to focus on something else. And so Activision gave us the Spider-Man thing. And so this was a big break for us. It was like, wow, we get to do something really fun. And so, yeah, so I took the Dreamcast, Max Steel engine and made it into a PlayStation 2 engine. And at the same time, Jason Bear, we only had about 4 or 5 programmers at the start of Spider-Man 1. So Wade was doing the graphics, I was doing the PlayStation port, and Jason Bear was doing all the gameplay conversions, right? And Jamie was, kind of holding down anything that needed to be done because he was the lead. So he can't really take on any mainline tasks, but he's kind of filling the gaps. So Jason did all the conversion, and what we did is we just spliced in code from Neversoft's Spider-Man game into the Max Steel framework. And so we kind of turned Max Steel into Spider-Man with a bunch of graphs from Neversoft's code. But we didn't use their whole code base. It was still our code base. We just kind of brought in pieces of it. So, that port of the engine, most of it went about 3 weeks. It was pretty quick to get it stood up on the new platform. But the thing that took the longest was the sound system. So the graphics were separate. Wade was doing the graphics, and that took a long time. But of the main parts that aren't graphics, disk access, controller, all that kind of stuff, sound was the biggest piece. And and the way the sound system works was there's a chip inside the PS2, which is basically the PS1. And that's how they did the backward compatibility, is they just said, oh, you're running a PS1 game, we're just going to use the PS1 chip. But they had that hardware in the system and they didn't want to waste it. So what they did is they said anything that had to do with disk access, controller access, or sound system access goes through this little PS1 chip. And so the main CPU is talking to that PS1 chip, which is called the IO processor, or the IOP. So it's talking back and forth between that. And it's a really low spec chip. It's not fast, has very little RAM. You only had a C compiler for it, if that's not too nerdy, but we had C++ on the main, and then C only for the IOP. It didn't have a floating point unit, so we couldn't do kind of complex math on it. It had to be only integer math. So it was a weird little chip, right? It's the PS1 chip. And so the process of getting the sound system up and running meant we had to write a bunch of code for that chip and then write a bunch of code on the main chip, have them talking back and forth. And then we didn't have a lot of RAM for sounds. So the sound chip had our most used sounds in it. And then everything else streamed off of the disk. So we would pull data into these big buffers for kind of dialogue lines, for cutscenes, the music track, and then kind of like sound effects and all that kind of stuff was just all streamed. So I had to write a full data streaming system for Spider-Man 1 just for just to kind of get the sound system working. So, that was the biggest challenge. And that's why I kind of was the platform programmer on Spider-Man 1, was because I was doing the PS2. Eventually we got other people in who did the GameCube port and the Xbox port. But we pioneered it on the PlayStation 2, and it was originally going to be only PlayStation 2 and Xbox was the original plan. And I have a shirt from an E3 that we did where it says Spider-Man, the movie game, PS2, Xbox. There's no mention of GameCube because GameCube was added late. So that's kind of a little historical artifact, but we managed to get GameCube on. GameCube was a weird architecture too. It had 2 different types of memory. One was slow and one was fast, and you had to kind of move stuff around between those. I think Michael Vance did all that stuff for us back in the time. So anyway, that's the platform stuff. And it was really fun to kind of get in at that low level, but I didn't spend all of my time there because the way that I am, I like low level system work, but I also like creative work. But if I do too much of either of those things, I get frustrated. So if I do too much low level platform work, I just say, oh, I just want to do something creative. Just give me anything. I want to do something fun. And then if I do too much creative work, I say, I just want a problem that has a singular solution. I don't want everybody's ideas about what is good, and because everybody, all the creatives, they all have different ideas. Like Chris Soros is like, oh, it should be like this, and Tomo and Aki are like, oh, it should be like this. And I just wanted a nice, simple solution that I could say, there it is, it's done, it's delivered, right? And so if I did too much creative, I got frustrated. I wanted real answers. If I did too much low-level stuff, I said, oh, I just want something fun to do. And so I kind of wobbled back and forth between those two things for the first few years of my career, discovering that where I liked being was exactly in the middle, you know.
Best of both
And
worlds.
so that's kind of where I've settled now, is I'm like right in between the low level people and the fun people. And I just kind of wiggle back and forth depending on my mood. So as we developed on the Spider-Man stuff, I did a lot of work on the AI system and some of the boss fights and stuff, just kind of as a treat to have some fun, to break up the monotony of all the, kind of low level, did the data show up on time? Why isn't the disk reading? All those sorts of things. So I guess the question was, what is a platform programmer? The platform programmer is making the game run on the particular platform in question. And so we had a PC version of the game always, but it also needed to run on other platforms. And there's an abstraction layer in the code that says all the game code talks to that abstraction code. And then that converts into platform stuff, specifics, depending on whether you're running on Windows or whether you're running on the PlayStation 2. And so, I just added a new platform for the PlayStation 2 in there, and then kind of built that up. And the bulk of it was on the sound system because that took the most time. And I probably won't go into all the key problems unless you want to get really nerdy. But it was mostly about data loading, like having the data that we loaded in ready to go. So when we load it in, it's called a memory image off of the disk, and we put it into RAM. It needed to be ready to use in 16 milliseconds or so, which is basically about, it's about half a second in gameplay terms, because we would spread out and do a little bit of the preparation each frame of the game. So we basically have to get a new chunk of the world ready in, basically 1 or 2 milliseconds per frame in the background within a second. And getting the data so that it could be loaded off disk and ready to use in that amount of time took a lot of work. Like that was the biggest piece, was making sure that the data that we loaded didn't have to take a lot of time getting set up. Because when you load data off disk, there's a bunch of stuff you have to do. And we had to we wrote out essentially memory images from the PS2 to disk, and then we just fixed up the internal pointers within that memory. We built memory images for all 3 platforms directly to disk so that they looked exactly like they would look in memory, essentially, on that particular platform. And so our PC version would lay out the data byte by byte, so that way it looked exactly like that platform expected. And then the Xbox had a different expectation, so we would lay it out exactly how it would expect it. And then the GameCube had a different one, we'd lay it out how it expected. So it was really low level stuff to get those memory images there so that they could be processed fast enough to be useful. Otherwise, because you have to do it in the background while you're playing the game, right? And I know this is veering off into like Spider-Man 2 territory, but it started in Spider-Man 1. Like Spider-Man 1, we wanted to do it, right? We didn't have the time we didn't have the expertise, we didn't have anything, right? But Spider-Man 2, we still had that drive of wanting to do it. And we actually had a little bit of time and to take a little bit more risk, and we did. So
the data streaming thing that you did on Spider-Man 1, that laid the foundation for the open world of Spider-Man 2, and that
absolutely
what you did was before GTA 3 existed or was released.
Well, I mean, it was data streaming, but the Spider-Man 1 version of data streaming was strictly sound streaming.
Yeah.
It was just getting soundtracks into RAM. the idea of using it for data was something that GTA definitely kind of like cracked the ball on, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we probably would have tried it, whether they did or not, knowing what we knew about how to make a game at that point, right? It's just, it was a moment in time where the hardware had caught up to what people wanted to do in making games. Yeah. And GTA was the first one to really deliver it. We were the first, I'm fairly certain we were the first cross-platform streaming game. The first cross-platform game for all three platforms, I believe, was FIFA from EA. But we were the first streaming game on all three platforms, like GTA style streaming, because GTA only shipped on the PS2 originally.
Yeah.
So the Spider-Man 2 was the first one to do it on all three platforms. So, we didn't get enough credit for that because the GameCube was super challenging. I'm not going to lie. That was a weird, tight little platform. But we got it done.
Yeah, that's an really interesting point. You don't get the credit for it. And back then, the doing it for each platform was like a very manual job. So that's like
they were more different, right? Modern platforms are way more similar. Like the PS5 and the Xbox, they're basically a PC in a funny shape inside, right?
Yeah.
But those era of consoles, every console had its own weird little things. Like the Dreamcast had dual density kind of DVDs. There were CDs, but they had extra density on them. So there was like a fast section of the disc and a slow section of the disc that was higher compression, and it was a weird little thing, right? And that was the Dreamcast. Like like I said, the GameCube had two different sections of RAM. There's the fast RAM and the slow RAM, and so we actually like streamed all of our stuff into the slow RAM, and then we would like internally stream it between the fast and the slow RAM, so that way we could get it there for gameplay. So that was mostly Michael Vance's wizardry. I think he made a deal with some otherworldly power to make that work, because the GameCube was some weird, tight little hardware, 24 megabytes total of, and hopefully I'm not wrong on those numbers, but it was less than the PS2. And so we had to like really squeeze the rock to try and make it fit. So that was tight, so you're doing a streaming thing on three different platforms, and each one has their own speed of the disc. Like the GameCube's disc was really fast. The Xbox was stupid slow, but it had a hard drive. And so we could we put some of so this is a trick. So the Xbox had a hard drive, and they had a different, okay, this is going to get a little nerdy. I'm sorry, people.
Go first.
But there was parts, the hard drive and the disc shared a data bus, which means they both went basically down the same pipe, right? So you couldn't get data from one source or the other at exactly the same time. But you could individually have the hard drive, the little read head on the hard drive and the laser on the CD moving physically at the same time, independent of one another. And so we would dump a portion of the disk onto your hard drive when you installed the game. And then we would get one of those devices getting ready to do its read while the other one was streaming the data into memory. And then we would switch over to the other device and get its data into memory while we're moving the read head of the other device. And so we kind of hid the slowest part of reading from a disk is moving the physical thing, the read head. And so we hid that on the Xbox by switching back and forth between these two physical devices. But we had to share the same bus. So we couldn't do it at exactly the same time reading from them. And so that really made the Xbox work, because without that, its reads were too slow because it had more RAM, and it was just, we had to get more data in than we did on the other platforms. And so we needed to really figure out a clever way to do it. So I guess what you're saying about like each platform being unique and having unique challenges, really, really played out when you're doing a cutting edge data streaming model. We had to solve each individual platform's tricky little details to make that vision a reality that all three platforms could do.
Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy. It's like I really think that people just don't understand or appreciate just how much more, I'll call it, complex it was making games back then. Even though the fidelity of what could be done was lower, but like even nowadays, like for like Unreal, somebody using Unreal Engine, like a lot of the heavy lifting is done for you. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm working with well, I have worked with the Unreal Engine. And it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. It's got particular choices to how they architected it that you kind of have to live with unless you want to rebuild it from scratch. And so there's just kind of certain things that are just baked in the cake, right? But in that era, everybody had their own engines, and we were solving these hardware challenges independently of one another, as we needed to. The fidelity of the graphics weren't as high, and there wasn't as much RAM to do it, and everything was tighter. And you say everything's more complex, and I would say that's true, but everything was also simpler. Like there was less stuff you had to do. There was less expectations on because the hardware just couldn't do that kind of stuff, right? Like some of the modern physical-based blending and things that you would do, modern hardware can do it, old hardware couldn't. So I think the modern version is way more complex because we're doing so much more. But back in those days, you couldn't do all that stuff. And so you had a smaller set of problems to solve. But the problems were complicated to solve, but they weren't bulk, big complication. It was precise, targeted problem solving. So, like the GameCube's RAM, it's like we got a weird RAM model. How are we going to deal with that? When we switched to the Spider-Man 2 stuff, the big problem was getting our data. Once it was off the disk, getting it ready to be used in memory takes a lot of time, and we had to scrunch that time down. And that's the kind of precise programming that we don't do in the modern era very much, because we're doing so many things. We're doing so much stuff, and everything's so big, and everything's so just all over the place that we can't get into those little cracks anymore, because the games would never ship if we were like going and micromanaging every little thing. But in that era, you weren't doing all those things. You had a much smaller thing that you had to achieve. And so you had the opportunity to go into those cracks and look for those hardware specific solutions that could get your game to really shine. The data streamer that we had in Spider-Man 2 was literally the best data streamer of the time. We blew the GTA, Vice City, GTA 3, all that PS2 era. The Spider-Man 2 data streamer blew them away completely. We pushed more memory. We pushed a further draw distance. Like, we completely annihilated them. And then the Ultimate Spider-Man one was a refinement on that, and it went even harder. That was the best data streamer of the generation. Nothing eclipsed this Ultimate Spider-Man data streaming. It was
really
top of the line. Oh yeah.
San Andreas is, I guess, widely regarded as, well, it is the pinnacle of the GTA ones of that era, because they removed the loading screens,
but the draw distance,
super short draw distance.
They didn't load as much stuff, and they didn't load it as fast, and they didn't have as much quality in the area. You go and if you look at the numbers, I don't have their numbers, but just looking at their data streamer as someone who has built one, I was like, keep it up, guys. You'll get there. The San Andreas one was better than GTA 3, and they did a fantastic job at GTA 3. It was really groundbreaking, but we did better.
The one that we did absolutely beat Vice City in terms of
the one that we did on Ultimate Spider-Man. I got the time that it takes to get new data ready to use. I got it down to a ridiculously small amount, and the extra work that we had to do to kind of get our data ready in that format was all automated. It was all really clean. And so we were able to push up our memory usage of our main memory data by an extra 2 megabytes in the Ultimate Spider-Man that we didn't have in Spider-Man 2. We had, out of 32 megabytes, we had an additional 2 megabytes for content. And that's huge. That was a huge, huge upgrade, right? And we streamed more data. We streamed higher fidelity data for Ultimate Spider-Man. And it streamed faster and better in every possible way. I optimized the data throughput. Everything was better on that one. So, how we did it is we just stopped allocating stuff. Oh, here we go. Talk to a platform programmer, you get platform words. We stopped allocating so much stuff on the heap. Almost everything in that game was in the data streamed buffers. And so there was only about 2 megabytes or so allocated to heap allocations, which is a very small percentage of the overall RAM. And that allowed us to have more content, just tons more content. Our art directors were super excited about being able to really devote more fidelity to the look of the game. We reduced the streaming threshold. We couldn't allow you to go as fast in Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, because they wanted to really leverage the visual quality. So that's why we ended up slowing down Spider-Man, was to allow you to have better visuals. So the data streamer didn't have to be quite so frantic at getting the data in. We could have bigger chunks of data that we loaded in. So
no, that's good. No, I definitely love to have a separate conversation about like the Spider-Man 2 and the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, I know. I think it's all
fascinating. Yeah,
but that's where it all led. Like it was built on Spider-Man 1 was all sound streaming, right? And then Spider-Man 2, we went to data. And then Ultimate Spider-Man, we just really refined it. So
yeah. No, it is fascinating and amazing. So jumping back to the Spider-Man one. So thanks for being here. If you want to talk just briefly about like past projects you've worked on.
Sure. I'm currently with Riot Games, working on a secret project that I can't talk about. But it's my 25th year in the industry. I started programming video games when I was 10 years old on my own. I just kind of learned it from an old basic manual on my 8086 IBM computer. And writing games was a hobby as I was a child. I just kind of made my own games, and I just kept doing it as I grew up. And I did it in college, and eventually I graduated college and decided I'm going to go ahead and do it as a career. I joined Treyarch as my first position, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then after about 6 years there, I burnt out, which we can talk about a little bit too. And I moved to Japan for 3 years, got my master's degree in international business, and then came back to the States, worked for Sucker Punch for about 10 or 11 years. So Treyarch was all Spider-Man games for the most part. And then Sucker Punch was mostly Infamous games. So I did the Infamous 2 through Second Son, which is the last one that they did. So it was 4 games, 2 small ones and then 2 big ones. And then we did Ghost of Tsushima, which is the kind of samurai themed game. And that was the last one I did with Sucker Punch. From there I went to Stoic, and I worked on a game that hasn't been announced yet. Or maybe it has, for a little while. But I got a really great offer from Riot to come over and join them. And I said, yes, please, because Riot is a great company. And so I'm lucky to be there and enjoying what secret stuff I'm working on for them. So that's kind of the history. Is a bunch of Spider-Man games, a little break where I did some remote game development in Japan, and then a bunch of Infamous games, the samurai game, and now Secrets.
That's cool. So, your like resume of like games you've worked on, and I mean this like really genuinely, it's like a lot of people's like dream. You like did a Spider-Man run straight into an Infamous run, Ghost of Tsushima, and Under the Wraps. But like just because I do find some people have like they've got like the big game they've worked on, and then they kind of went to like another company with a different role, and then it was like smaller games, and stuff like that. But yours has been like pretty solidly big.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some small ones in there. In Japan, I worked mostly on ports. So like porting to different languages, mostly the Asian languages. And then I worked remotely on a small Xbox Live game called Schizoid with Jamie Fristrom and Bill and Tim and a couple people from the old Spider-Man team. We were working on that one. Richard Garfield was actually a designer on that game. If you've heard of him, he's a Magic the Gathering designer.
Oh,
So he helped us with that. But it was a really small little game. And then before I left Japan, I worked at a company called Inis, INIS, for about 4 months, where I discovered that I was not cut out for Japanese game companies. And I worked on a game called Lips 2 for the Xbox 360. So it was a singing kind of like SingStar sort of game.
oh, okay.
So there's some little stuff in between all the big tentpoles, right? But
Yeah.
my main runs have been, at some really good companies doing kind of action adventure style superhero games for the most part. I mean,
Yeah, actually,
Spider-Man's superhero. Infamous is basically superhero with a little bit more of a modern twist, right? Ghost of Tsushima, we went a little bit more grounded, but with my history, my wife's Japanese, and living in Japan for 3 years, it was a real dream game for me to work on. So that was kind of the capstone of my career so far was doing that one. So it's been a good run. I've been
Yes.
able to do some really cool stuff, and I'm real proud of a lot of things that I did on a lot of those games. So like the Spider-Man 2 and Ultimate Spider-Man, we did some really innovative stuff,
Yeah.
technically and gameplay wise. And the Infamous 2, we did a user-generated content system, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's
I
basically people
didn't
can make
play Infamous 2. I did played the first one like extensively.
Okay. So the second one, we allowed you to basically make your own missions and stuff in an in-game editor. And I worked extensively on that part. So that was really fun, kind of making a game that you could make your own stuff in. So that was cool. It was before a lot of that was really happening. I mean, now Minecraft and Roblox and all those things are much more into that, but and Fortnite is even getting into it.
Yeah.
But having user generated content was kind of new. And then the Ghost game, I think we did a really good job, just kind of polishing the experience and making it really feel like you're in a Disneyland-sized Japan.
Yeah.
It's shrunk down. Everything's tiny compared to the real size of Japan, but it's like compressed down to Japan in Disneyland form. So.
If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, share, subscribe, and if you didn't enjoy the video, like, comment, share, and subscribe.